The first crisp November air swept through Atlanta, carrying the scent of wood smoke and damp leaves. But inside Alara Washington's modest apartment, the chill was coming directly from her husband, Mark. He was aggressively polishing his best Allen Edmonds shoes, buffing the black leather with a fervor that was almost violent. They were the same shoes he'd worn 3 years ago at that small coffee shop, the ones he'd been wearing when he promised Alara he loved her for who she was, not what she had. He was preparing for a battle, Alara could see that. But she was beginning to realize the enemy he saw was her. The apartment was quiet, their cozy two-bedroom in Virginia Highland, usually a refuge. A small ceramic turkey sat on the dining table, surrounded by autumn-colored placemats, a nod to the coming Thanksgiving. The air smelled of the dark roast coffee Alara was sipping, a simple comfort. But the peace was hollow. Mark, handsome and restless, paced the living room, checking his phone every few seconds as if expecting a royal summons. His ambition was a third person in their marriage, and lately, it was the only one he spoke to. Alara, curled on the sofa in a simple cable-knit sweater, watched him over the rim of her book. As the head community librarian, she was used to observing. Her patience, once a deep well, was visibly thinning, replaced by a quiet, persistent sadness. Mark finally stopped pacing and let out an exasperated sigh, his eyes landing on the thick, cream-colored invitation propped on the mantel. "Alara, I need you to understand," he said, his voice sharp. "This isn't just a party. This is the party. The annual Founders Gala. Everyone who matters in Atlanta will be there." Alara looked up, marking her page. "I know, Mark. You've mentioned it." Her voice was soft, contrasting his. "It'll be nice to support the Children's Literacy Fund. That's why we're going, right?" He scoffed, a short barking sound, as he ran a hand through his hair. "Right, the fund. Alara, this is my chance. This is how people like me get noticed. It's my chance to finally get the attention of the senior partners." He leaned in, his eyes gleaming with a mix of greed and desperation. "And Samuel Harrison is the keynote speaker. The Samuel Harrison. The man's a tech legend, a recluse. If I can just get 30 seconds with him, it could change everything. For us." Alara's heart sank. She knew he wasn't thinking about us. He was thinking about him. Then, his critical gaze landed on her, sweeping from her simple sweater down to her wool socks. "Which reminds me," he said, his tone shifting from anxious to managerial. "We need to find you something appropriate. Something sophisticated. Not your usual kind librarian look." Alara flinched, a small, almost imperceptible tightening of her shoulders. "I was planning on wearing the blue silk dress," she said quietly. "The one I wore to your cousin's wedding." Mark shook his head before she even finished, a look of genuine horror on his face. "Absolutely not. No. It's too plain. Too simple." He didn't want to just go to the party. He wanted to conquer it, and she was apparently faulty armor. "We'll have to go shopping. This is an investment, Alara. We need to look the part." Mark closes his laptop, forcing a tight, insincere smile. "Just trust me on this, honey. This night has to be perfect. For us." We're only at the end of chapter 1, but the tension is already palpable. Mark wants the perfect night, but that forced smile tells a different story. If you're still following along and feeling the weight Alara is carrying, comment 8 below to let us know you're with her. This is just the beginning. To witness Alara's journey and see how her true brilliance overcomes these stereotypes, don't forget to subscribe to Black Brilliance and turn on the notification bell. Your support is invaluable as we continue to create inspiring and meaningful stories. Now, let's see what Mark does next. The Oakhurst Community Library was Alara's sanctuary, a place where the scent of old paper and floor wax felt more welcoming than her own home. Here, she wasn't Mark's underachieving wife. She was Mrs. Washington, the head librarian, a person of value. As she helped a young reader navigate the complex world of college applications, she remembered Mark's critical gaze from the night before, sizing her up as if she were a faulty product. The gala wasn't just a party. It was starting to feel like a test, one she was doomed to fail. "This is strong, Keisha, really strong," Alara said, her voice a soft anchor in the quiet room. She tapped the printed essay with her pen. "You've captured your grandmother's voice perfectly. Don't second-guess yourself." Keisha, a bright, nervous 17-year-old high school senior, chewed on her lip, her eyes fixed on a different part of the screen. The essay's one thing, Mrs. Washington. But this application fee. Alara saw the girl's shoulders slump. Keisha's family worked hard, but $50 for a single application was a luxury they couldn't afford. Without a word, Alara opened her own purse, pulled a folded $50 bill from her wallet, and slid it under Keisha's hand. "Let's not worry about that part," Alara said gently before Keisha could protest. "Let's just focus on your future." Keisha's eyes filled with tears. "Mrs. Washington, I can't." "You can and you will," Alara said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Now, let's look at that closing paragraph one more time." The doors to the library chimed, and Mark strode in, his expensive Allen Edmonds shoes clicking loudly on the worn linoleum. He looked at the rows of books, at the slightly faded walls, and at Keisha with a polite but dismissive smile, checking his watch. He was a man in a tailored suit standing in a world he found embarrassing, and he was clearly embarrassed for her. "Alara, honey, you ready? We have that appointment," he called out, his voice too loud for the space. The boutique in Buckhead was the exact opposite of the library. It was all white marble, glass, and cold, intimidating silence. Alara felt like an imposter, her simple clothes screaming out of place against the sterile backdrop. Mark, however, was in his element. He strode in, nodding at the sales associates as if he owned the place. He immediately began steering her toward the flashiest, most expensive dresses. "Alara, you have to look the part," he hissed, yanking a sequin monstrosity from the rack. "You can't look like you just stepped out of that library. You're my wife. You represent me." A sales associate, sensing the tension, brought over a sleek, simple black dress. It was elegant, timeless. Alara reached for it, a small spark of relief. "This one, Mark. This is lovely." Mark shook his head, a look of distaste. "No. It's too severe. It makes you look... I don't know." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so the associate couldn't hear. "Can't we find something in a lighter color? To soften, your features." Alara froze. The coded, racist implication landed like a slap. Soften her features. He didn't want her to look elegant. He didn't want her to look too black. He and the associate picked out a gaudy, champagne-colored dress with too much lace. Alara hated it. She felt like a lampshade. Mark pulled out his credit card, wincing slightly at the price but clearly seeing it as a necessary cost. "This is an investment," he muttered, more to himself than to her, as the associate wrapped the dress in layers of tissue paper. "You just need to blend in. Don't draw attention with all the community talk. Just smile." Alara looks at the expensive dress bag in her hand, feeling more like a prop than a wife. "Who exactly are you so afraid of me embarrassing, Mark?" The night of the gala arrived, and the apartment felt less like a home and more like a backstage dressing room for a play Alara never auditioned for. Mark was a bundle of raw nerves, pacing in his rented tuxedo, adjusting his bow tie every few seconds. It reminded Alara of him polishing his shoes, anxious energy channeled into a meaningless task. He was preparing to impress a man he'd never met, Samuel Harrison, unaware that the man he truly needed to impress was the wife standing right in front of him. Alara felt stiff and self-conscious in the champagne-colored dress. It itched. She felt like a gaudy, borrowed version of herself. She had, however, added one defiant touch. Mark's eyes immediately zoned in on it. "Is that all the jewelry you have?" he asked, his voice tight with disapproval. "Those tiny pearls?" Alara's hand instinctively flew to the necklace, a simple, elegant strand. "They were my mother's," she said quietly. "They're all I need." Fine, Mark sighed, dismissing the sentiment entirely. "Just try to stand up straight. They're so old-fashioned. They'll just make you look older." He couldn't see their value, only their lack of flash. As Mark frantically searched for his misplaced cufflinks, Alara's phone buzzed. She stepped into the bedroom for a rare moment of privacy, the door clicking softly shut. "Hi, Daddy," she whispered, a genuine smile finally touching her face. His voice, warm, deep, and reassuring, filled her ear. "Just checking in, sweetheart. You sound tired." I'm fine," she lied, sinking onto the bed. Just getting ready for that event Mark was so excited about. The gala, he rumbled. Will you be a big girl? I'm sure you'll light up the room. I love you. I love you too, she said, feeling a pang of homesickness. See you soon. She clicked off the phone and returned to the living room. Mark looked up, annoyed. Who was that? Your father. He didn't wait for an answer. Is he still driving that old Ford truck? I swear I heard it rattling last time he visited. Sounded like it was about to fall apart. Alara paused, her hand still on her mother's pearls. Something like that. He just wished me luck. Mark actually patted her arm, a condescending, dismissive gesture. That's sweet. Look, maybe after I land this promotion, after I make contact with Harrison, we can finally send your parents some real money. Help them fix that old truck. Get them something respectable. The arrogance of it, the assumption that he was the one with the power, struck Alara dumb. The drive to the Atlanta High Museum of Art was tense. They pulled up to the grand, glowing entrance in their modest 8-year-old Toyota Camry, immediately getting stuck in a valet line between a new black Rolls-Royce and a vintage silver Bentley. Mark physically shrank in his seat, his face flushing crimson. He looked at his own car with utter contempt. He shoved the valet key at the attendant without making eye contact, then grabbed Alara's arm, practically yanking her from the car and rushing her inside. As they walked up the Grand Museum stairs, past towering, spotlit sculptures, Mark was sweating. He was terrified. He leaned in close, his breath hot and sour with anxiety, hissing in her ear. Don't leave my side. Don't talk to anyone unless I introduce you, and please, his grip tightened, try to act like you belong here. Alara stops at the top of the stairs, looking down at her husband, and for the first time, she doesn't see the man she married. She only sees a terrified stranger she doesn't know at all. Mark's words on those steps were unbelievably cruel. Alara is now walking into that gala, looking at her husband as a total stranger, and he has no idea who he just insulted. If you are still watching and you are standing with Alara as she walks through those doors, let us know you're here by commenting with a number 8 below. You are not going to want to miss what happens inside that ballroom. If you haven't already, this is the perfect time to subscribe to Black Brilliance and ring that bell. Your support is what allows us to keep bringing you these powerful stories of resilience and hidden strength. Now, let's go inside that party. The moment they stepped through the arched doorway into the glittering ballroom, Mark dropped Alara's arm as if her touch were contaminating him. The High Museum's atrium was packed, the high ceilings buzzing with the sound of hundreds of conversations, all layered under the sophisticated strains of a soft jazz string quartet. It was a sea of tuxedos and silk, and Mark was desperate to swim. His eyes scanned the room, hunting for the important faces he'd memorized from Atlanta Business Chronicle. He was completely unaware that the most important face in the room, Samuel Harrison, was already standing near the stage, watching him, a flute of untouched champagne in his hand. Okay, Alara, stay here, Mark commanded, his voice tight. He parked her by a large, imposing potted plant near the entrance. Don't wander off. Before she could even respond, he was gone, slicking back his hair and moving toward a cluster of older men. Alara felt isolated and invisible, a prop in a dress she hated, clutching a small glass of water. She watched him working the room, laughing too loud at jokes he clearly didn't get, forcing handshakes, his confidence a cheap, brittle veneer. She looked around. She saw the mayor. She saw several prominent black couples, doctors and lawyers she recognized from the news, mingling, laughing, clearly respected and at ease. The sight made Mark's prejudice feel even more isolating. This wasn't about class. It was about his shame. She was studying a painting on the far wall when a man's voice broke her solitude. Thompson? Is that your wife over there? Alara saw Mark freeze. He was talking to Mr. Henderson, a man in his mid-60s with sharp, observant eyes, who was looking right at her. Henderson, a potential major client, smiled warmly. You shouldn't leave such a lovely woman standing by herself. Forced, Mark waved Alara over, his smile a tight grimace of annoyance. Ah yes. Mr. Henderson, this is my wife, Alara. Mr. Henderson took Alara's hand. A pleasure, my dear. That's a beautiful necklace. A classic. Alara smiled, thank you. It was my mother's. What do you do, Alara? Henderson asked kindly. Before Alara could speak, Mark cut her off with an apologetic, patronizing laugh. Oh, Alara runs a small community library over in Oakhurst. You know, he said, turning to Henderson, picture books and arts and crafts. A very sweet hobby. Alara's breath caught. A hobby? Mark then put his arm, not on Alara's shoulder, but on the back of the chair next to her, a gesture of public distancing. He lowered his voice to Henderson, but Alara heard every single, devastating word. She's not really used to these kinds of events, sir. Grew up very simple. But I insisted she come. He leaned in, as if sharing a joke. It's good for her to see how the real world operates, right? Mr. Henderson raises an eyebrow, his warm smile fading, clearly unimpressed by Mark's comment, just as the ballroom lights begin to dim for the keynote address. The MC tapped the microphone, and a hush fell over the room as Mark, oblivious, tried to whisper one last sycophantic joke to Mr. Henderson. Henderson wasn't listening. He was watching Alara with a look of sharp, unreadable calculation. Alara, for her part, felt a strange, sudden calm. She looked past Mark, past the sea of tables, toward the man walking onto the stage. She finally understood her father's words on the phone. See you soon. Mark was still grinning, a desperate, frozen smile, completely oblivious that his entire career was about to end. The foundation president, a poised woman in her 60s, beamed at the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, she said, her voice warm and clear. And now, it is my profound honor to introduce the man whose vision and generosity made our new literacy wing possible, the founder of the Harrison Foundation and our keynote speaker, Mr. Samuel Harrison. Mark, who had been leaning in toward Mr. Henderson, froze. The name hit him like a physical blow. He looked at the stage, where the distinguished, powerful black man was adjusting the microphone. He looked at Alara, who was already watching the stage. He looked back at the man whose name, Harrison, was the same as Alara's phone contact. The color drained from his face, leaving a pasty, sick-looking mask. Harrison, he whispered, the name catching in his throat. Mr. Harrison stepped up to the podium. The room was his. Thank you, Madam President, he said. His voice was deep and warm, instantly recognizable to Alara, the same voice that had wished her luck from a rattling old truck. He spoke about the importance of giving back, of community, and of the sacred, transformative power of libraries. He concluded his short, powerful speech, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found his daughter. I started this fund 15 years ago because I believe in the power of community libraries, he said, his voice resonating with pride. I learned that belief from the person I admire most in the world, a woman who, despite having access to every privilege imaginable, chose to dedicate her life to public service, to the quiet, noble work of literacy. Mark stopped breathing. Mr. Henderson was staring at Mark now, his expression one of pure contempt. I am so proud, Mr. Harrison continued, to have her here tonight. My daughter, Alara Washington Harrison. The spotlight swings from the stage and lands directly on Alara, just as Mr. Harrison steps down from the podium and begins walking directly toward her table, ignoring everyone else in his path. The 30-second walk from the stage to the table felt like an eternity, and for Mark Thompson, it was a silent execution. The string quartet was silent. The clinking of glasses had stopped. Hundreds of people were watching as the most powerful man in the room made his way, not to the mayor, not to Mr. Henderson, but to the librarian in the old-fashioned pearls. Mr. Harrison reached the table. He completely ignored Mark, who was frozen in a half-standing, half-sitting crouch. He walked straight to Alara, his eyes soft with a love that needed no validation. He took her hands and gently, with one finger, touched the pearl necklace. You look just like your mother, sweetheart, he said, his voice just for her. Are you all right? Alara simply nodded, her eyes finally filling with tears, not of humiliation, but of release. Mark finally found his voice, a desperate, croaking sound as he stumbled to his feet. Mr. Harrison. Sir. I had no idea. He turned, manic, to his wife. Alara, honey, why didn't you tell me? Mr. Harrison turned his gaze to Mark. The warmth was gone, replaced by an icy, diamond-hard calm. "You had no idea," he stated. "My daughter deserved your respect?" He didn't wait for an answer. He looked past Mark to Mr. Henderson, who was already discreetly stepping away from Mark as if he were toxic. "Henderson," Mr. Harrison said, his voice polite but firm. "My apologies you had to witness this. My corporation was reviewing Peterson Marketing's bid for our new $5 million tech account." He paused, letting the weight of the word settle. "That review is now over. We won't be moving forward." Mark visibly crumbled, his perfect night dissolving into absolute ruin. 2 months later, it was early winter. The Oakhurst Community Library was buzzing. Alara was at her desk, helping Keisha finalize her college applications, all of which were now fully funded by a new private scholarship. Keisha was going to be the first in her family to attend university. Outside the window, a large banner hung, flapping in the cold wind. "Coming soon, the Harrison Foundation Community Wing and Tech Center." Alara had filed for divorce the day after the gala. Mark, fired for losing the Harrison account, had tried calling, sending desperate, rambling emails. They ranged from begging for forgiveness to accusing her of trapping him. Alara had blocked his number. Alara looks up as the first snow of the season begins to fall, dusting the Atlanta streets in a rare, clean white. She felt lighter than she had in years. She wasn't just a billionaire's daughter or a humiliated wife. She was Alara, the librarian, and she was finally free. As the first snow settled over Atlanta, Alara Washington was finally free, leaving behind the cold judgment of a man who saw only status, not substance. Her story is a quiet, powerful reminder that true worth is never loud. It is measured in the dignity we keep and the kindness we extend, even when no one is watching. Like her mother's pearls, real value doesn't need to shout. If this story of resilience resonated with your heart, please share that warmth with others. And to ensure you never miss a story that uplifts and inspires, we hope you'll consider joining our community by subscribing to Black Brilliance.